Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 79 for the 23rd of April, 2010. Richard Saunders here with you once again. What a week I've had, listeners. What a fantastically restful, wonderful week. On Monday I drove from Sydney to just outside of Albury, about 6.5 hours drive, to visit Jim Wilshire. Now, Jim is the guy who does this.
Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
A very old friend of mine, and it was just wonderful to spend a few days with him, celebrate his birthday. He lives on a huge farm, rolling countryside, cows everywhere, dogs, little farmhouse. What a magical time. Thanks, Jim. Thanks very much. Jim's probably going to be popping up to Sydney before too long. If he does, we'll certainly grab him for a think tank. Now, I must say before we get on to the show that the big news this week in Australia, in Australian sport, was the fact that the rugby league club in Melbourne, the Melbourne Storm, have been stripped of the last virtually 5 years of their accomplishments. They won 2 grand finals. That's been stripped from them. All the points they've accrued this year have been stripped, and they can't accrue any more points due to a scandal involving money and salary caps and players and this sort of thing. It's huge news. It really is. And a lot of people, including my friend Jim, were really shaken up by this because they were fans of this, the club, the Storm. Imagine, listeners, if your favourite sporting club, your football club, your baseball club, your basketball club, cricket club, whatever it might be, was suddenly stripped of all their accomplishments over the last 5 years and looked like they were going to simply fade into nothing. You'd be devastated. Now, I only say this because earlier this year, some of our supposedly most famous and best clairvoyants and psychics were predicting who would win this football competition this year in October. I think they missed the boat. Once again, they should have told everybody that there was a huge scandal coming up which would rock the game to its very core. Another miss for the psychics. But on to this week's show. And I must thank Dr. Rachael really for putting this week's show all together, or recording it, as I was away enjoying myself. Dr. Rachael popped into the ABC here in Sydney, the broadcasting people, and she interviewed one of my favourites when I was a bit younger, Maynard F-sharp Crabs. Now, a lot of Australian listeners will certainly remember Maynard. He was a huge influence on a lot of people. Well, in the late 80s and the 90s, he's still going strong. So I'm really looking forward to this one myself. Maynard F-sharp Crabs. Really fantastic to hear what he's been up to. And following that, we have the think tank with Dr. Rachael and Eran and Joe, Dave the Happy Singer, and a drunken madman. So that's this week's show. I hope you enjoy it. Sit back, grab that nice cup of ginger tea, and enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Maynard started his career as a volunteer in community radio in Newcastle, which is north of Sydney. He had his own program called Radio Stupid, and during a time when no other presenters were encouraged to have talkback callers, Maynard was the first one to do so. He established the Castanet Club with Mikey Robbins, who has since gone on to a very successful career in Australian television. But in Australia, Maynard is probably best known for his work on Triple J Breakfast, which he did from 1987 until the early 90s. Any Australian X-generation folks that are listening would remember his Dob in a Dag, Wakey Wakey Hands Off Snakey, and many other tricks that he used to get up to. I'm really pleased to be presenting this interview to you today, as I remember Maynard really well from those days. Maynard Maynard F-sharp crabs. Can I still call you F-sharp crabs?
Well, look, that's an interesting story. You actually just call me Maynard, because when I was doing commercial radio on UFM in Newcastle after I finished up on Triple J Breakfast, the Maynard F-sharp crabs was just too difficult for a commercial radio audience to get their ear around. They were like, what? Huh? So we just call it Maynard, which is good, because most people on commercial radio are normally Maynardo or Maynardy or some really blokey thing. So Maynard's just fine, yeah, and that's the way we like to be known.
All right.
One word like Madonna and cheese.
And cheese. Or Kylie.
Kylie, exactly. I'm lucky that way.
Well, welcome Kylie Cheese or Maynardo to the Skeptic Zone.
Look, it's great to be here with you in a very small room in ABC Ultimo.
We're in the TARDIS.
That's right.
Aren't we? Which is a very small little recording studio in ABC Ultimo, yeah.
Yeah, and we deliberately called them these at the ABC because, they're small little rooms that, when you're talking to someone, you don't know what size it is. Yeah. But, there's enough room to swing a cat or an ABC presenter in here.
Yeah, that's true. So, Maynard, I came to talk to you today because I found an interview you did a couple of weeks ago with our friend Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com.
Look, Brian Dunning was I had the joy of chatting to him for half an hour. And look, I've got a very small brain. And in fact, I'm a bit confused as to why I'm even on this program, the Skeptic Zone, because I'm not very bright. If you held me up as a skeptic, I wouldn't be a good one. I'm your classic straw man skeptic.
Really?
Someone's like, oh, look at Maynard. He might be a skeptic, and, the argument will fall completely apart. So I'm not exactly your first speaker in a debate, let's put it that way.
Okay, yeah. But now you did have some fun with Brian in his hot tub of skepticism, didn't you?
Brian Dunning is fantastic. He doesn't like to have this pointed out, but he does have a hot tub of truth. Where he is often sky-clad of a weekend with various people. I'm not quite sure. And see, he might have a problem with that, but I think as long as you get the maths right, if you're sitting on the toilet and saying the right thing, it doesn't matter. So I don't see why you shouldn't be nude in a spa. And Brian's pretty smart. I really listen every week to his stuff. It took me a while to catch up. I was a late one. I was a bit tardy to the party, as they say.
I see.
And I love Skeptoid because Brian sets out the myth or the story, and then he goes apart saying why it's not true. And I think that's a great way to do things. And it's short and concise. Yeah,
and it's also not sort of judgmental, is it? He really just lays the facts out and then you can decide for yourself. Because skeptics sometimes get accused of being a little bit, like atheists do, a bit arrogant.
That is skeptics and atheists often make the big mistake that the churches have been making and has been annoying us all for years, is that they have that I know I'm right thing about them. And the sense of righteousness does tend to annoy people. And sure, there's logic on their side and they can prove everything. but that does tend to annoy people a little bit when they get a bit too evangelical. And I can understand it. Brian himself said in my interview that Richard Dawkins is an atheist activist, and he wasn't convinced that he has actually convinced too many people who weren't atheists already. And I think that's an interesting argument.
Well, speaking of evidence, Maynard, I have evidence that hot tub of truth exists, because Richard Saunders, who's also on the Skeptic Zone, he has actually done a hot tub or a think tank from Brian's hot tub of truth.
Yeah, now what is this? Now, I thought that segment was originally called the drunk tank, which I thought was an Americanism you'd adopted. And so there was a think tank from the hot tub of truth.
That's right, yes. Yeah.
Wow.
And there was glass being broken. Someone smashed a champagne glass.
Oh, just like in that scene from Showgirls, where they go swimming in the pool and they drop champagne glasses in the pool.
I think so.
Everybody else was looking at the nude bodies, but I was going, that's incredibly unsafe. You shouldn't be dropping glass. What if some kiddie went in there the next day?
Well, we'll have to get on to Brian about that, won't we?
Yeah, that is known as the pool scene from Showgirls. Look it up on YouTube.
Isn't that like the worst movie ever?
Oh, yeah, and that's the worst scene.
Is it?
Yeah, and of course Agent Cooper's there, naked himself, Kyle MacLachlan, and it's a pretty funny thing, yeah. And the sex scene, it looks a bit like a washing. It turns sort of the pool into a washing tub. It's pretty funny.
Right. So
that's the kind of thing. That's why you don't want me being a spokesman for any skeptic movement, which I'm not. Because, I get up and I get sidetracked like stuff like that.
Right. Okay, well, can we get back to skepticism for a moment? I didn't actually even know if you are a skeptic. The first thing I ever heard of you being interested in the movement at all was with the Brian Dunning interview. So tell me, are you a skeptic?
I think it's safe to say I'm pretty skeptical. I have been along to the Newcastle Skeptics meeting a number of times.
Oh, you have? Okay.
And I'm a fan of the guys there. I don't know, but also, look, yes, I am, but also... Look, just to give you an idea, on my iPod here, I've got the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, the Atheist Experience, which is the podcast from the Austin, Texas atheists. That's pretty cool. I've got you guys, the Skeptic Zone. But at the same time, I'm a huge fan of a show that simply describes it. But they go out and they hit people in the mouth, metaphorically. That is the No Agenda Show with Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak. And what they do in the morning is basically postulate what-ifs, and they've got some really crackpot ideas that I love listening to. For example, the HAARP array, is that part of an earthquake machine? All the evidence points to that not being the case, but I like entertaining the idea that there might be an earthquake machine, and what political ramifications would there be if there was. Of course, Brian Dunning has completely debunked the fact that there is, but, it's fun to imagine what if. So, yes, I'm skeptic, but, I enjoy the what if possibilities, and I entertain them. I mean, have you got a pet conspiracy theory?
I have. I was going to ask you about that. I do have one. My favourite is the Illuminati, which is run by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and this involves the lizard people. Have you heard about that? Well, the royal family is supposed to be a reptilian bunch of people, and they're just hiding as humans until they come out and take over the world. It's part of the New World Order. Well, in fact, before you go on, Brian did a Georgia Guidestones. Did you hear his course?
Yes.
That's a little bit to do with that, the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. Yeah.
Well,
what's your favourite?
The only answer I have to that particular theory is I have met a Rothschild. Ash, who was the lead singer of Caligula, is a Rothschild or related to the Rothschilds. And I remember drinking with him one night and declaring him a pretty piss-poor number of the beast because he just didn't strike me as someone who would be a member of the people that would take over the world. But maybe he's lower down the ranking. That's Ash, lead singer of Caligula. Look up their version of Tears of a Clown on YouTube.
So you don't have a favourite conspiracy theory?
Well, see, again, look, and I'm also a big fan in Sydney of going along to Jamie Leonardo's Moo Maison Archives, where they have a conspiracy little get-together every Monday night, and again, conspiracy is a bit wrong, because I think whenever you say that normally means crackpot. And in a court of law, a conspiracy doesn't always mean a crackpot theory in that case.
No, that's true.
Where in the skeptics world, when you hear conspiracy theory, you automatically think of people with propeller hats on and that sort of thing.
Or tinfoil hats too.
Or tinfoil hats as well, which there's a great how-to on the web about how to make one as well. You should try. Yes, there's a how-to page on how to make your own tinfoil hat beanie.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
perfect for the upcoming Australian winter. And look, I like going along to those things, but my favourite theory of that would be, look, I've always been fascinated by unidentified flying objects, and I've also been fascinated by all the noise and signals surrounding the Kennedy assassination, as a lot of people have. So these are pretty major ones. They're not particularly exciting. But there's also the great sock conspiracy that we can all feed into, which is, there is a logical explanation to where your socks go, and I'm sure has there been a theory? Has anyone got an Ig Nobel award for discovering where their socks have gone?
No.
Because there's an Ig Nobel award for someone who can find out where they disappeared to. Because logically they should be on the floor in your house or somewhere in the washing machine. But do you ever find them? No.
I wonder if Dr. Karl can get onto this, perhaps.
I'm surprised he hasn't got onto it already. I suspect he probably has. Or Brian Dunning could do an entire show on this. It's probably a bit below Brian, I've got to say.
Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com.
That's right, the man with the hot tub. Perhaps he loses the odd pair of swimmers in the hot tub of truth.
I bet he does. In fact, he wanted me to say to you, crikey.
Crikey.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I don't know why.
Probably just because we're Australians, and I might have said that to him. Crikey.
Yeah, maybe.
Got to be careful saying that.
Now, you were telling me on the way up here about a podcast which is called Look at His Butt.
That's right.
Can you tell me about that?
Now, look, it is again one of my favourite ones. I know everyone listening is a William Shatner fan. Because who isn't? Who hasn't had at least one time in their life a Shatner moment? I can't think what mine was. Maybe I'm yet to have it. But basically, you've got two girls who love the work of William Shatner and have a sense of irony about the whole thing. And when they were young, they used to watch Star Trek and go, wow, look at his butt. And now they have their own podcast which looks at the work of William Shatner. They also do reviews of sex toys. So if you know any other podcast out there that combines science fiction and sex toy reviews, let me know, because theirs is the one to look at. And they go and do wild stuff all the time. And they're always talking about William and apparently in some scenes, I haven't been looking this closely, of original Star Trek, I think they call them EVEs, erroneous visual erections or something like that, caused by the fact that when they sit down with the pants buff up in the front. Now, I haven't noticed this, but that happens a lot.
Okay.
Just as in Star Trek The Next Generation, whenever anyone gets up or gets into a seat, you see them pulling their costume down because they were badly designed. They weren't designed to stand up and sit down in. So there's little things like that. So Look at His Butt is a show to investigate for that kind of thing.
Well, I'm going to Dragon Con this year, Maynard, in Atlanta, Georgia, which is one of the biggest science fiction conventions.
I think the Butt Girls, as they're known, will also be there as well.
Really? I'll have to catch up with them. Because last year William Shatner was there, but I couldn't see his butt. And that was because his people were surrounding him everywhere he went. So he had this sort of circle of people everywhere, and they'd shuffle across the room. So
how many people does Shatner have?
He had enough people so you couldn't take a photo of him without paying $75.
Well,
Yeah.
he does like shilling for the money.
Yeah, he shilled.
He knows how to make money. Just look at him.
Yeah. Well, so tell me a little bit about what you're up to, because you were my favourite DJ in the 90s.
What?
I used to wake up every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning to hear you say, "Wakey, wakey, hands off, snakey."
And and just the simple call of "wake up, you dumb bugger." Which, it's very Australian, and also if someone says that to you in the morning, you'll either get really annoyed or you'll get out of bed.
Yeah, but there was one about the bus as well. I remember you used to go on about, "Hurry up, the bus is coming to the bus stop now." Do you remember that?
Well, I just do a simple thing, which is always good for a radio announcer. Like, for example, I could say now, it's 13 past 2. If you had to catch the bus at 10 past 2, you've missed it. Just simple stuff like that. And,
which is helpful.
It is helpful to people in the morning because they can give up and go back to bed, or they can just get depressed that they're going to be late for work. And I like having that on them. Also, what I used to do, and, sometimes I do it on April Fool's Day, but just quietly have a phone ringing noise during songs. Just have a sound effect of a normal phone ringing. Just fire it off once or twice during a song, or a cat meowing or something like that in the background of things that are going on normally and make no reference to it. And you'd have people wandering around the house looking for their cat or answering a phone that doesn't ring. Fantastic.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with yourself now? You're still doing radio, aren't you?
Well, a lot of people think I'm dead. And, half the time...
I can't prove that you're not.
That's true. Well, half the time I'm in Newcastle, which is very similar. Basically, I'm online goose for ABC Newcastle half the time. Online goose, because ABC has all these great titles for what you do, like cross-media reporter. I don't know what that means. You've got a doctorate. What does the cross-media reporter mean? Is it someone who's angry all the time?
Possibly.
Could be. Yeah,
person, yeah.
Look, I decided that I needed a title that if you read something by me, you could not possibly be disappointed. So I thought Online Goose would be good. But you go, well, that's not well written. Well, it's written by Online Goose. Oh, yeah, it doesn't matter. Let's see, yeah.
That's your get-out clause, is it?
Oh, my plan. Under-promise and under-deliver, Dr. Rachael. That's the key to life.
I see.
Yeah, and basically I do radio stuff for them, do a bit of video for the web. Did a lot of fun last year. I did a series of videos called 30-Second Special with Jay Katz about some lesser-known pop moments that I thought needed to be held up into the light, like the work of Frank Bennett, like the work of Frank Sinatra Jr., a few little clips like that. So search that out on YouTube if you get a bit of a chance.
30-Second Special.
Hello and welcome to 30 Second Special, the show where we get a little bit of pop culture nugget that's been swept under the carpet, pick it up, put it on a microscope, look at it and go, ooh-wee. And I'll tell you what, today we've got perhaps the sexiest dancer, stroke singer, stroke actress who's ever had a Bolivian aerospace engineer as a father, Raquel Welch.
I mean, tell me, Maynard, was there a Bolivian space program?
Yeah, they got as high as 15 feet. Someone got a bit of a Bolivian nosebleed. They had to come back down.
Oh, really? And that was just to look down on that beautiful daughter of his, Raquel.
Indeed.
Look, Raquel had an extraordinary career. She's probably most well known for film, Maynard. She starred in over 30 films. One of the greatest, as far as I'm concerned. She doesn't speak a word of English. 1 million BC. She's in a prehistoric bikini. One of the most controversial was Myra Breckenridge, in which she plays a transsexual. That worried a lot of people. But what we're looking at today comes from a great special, a 1970 TV special.
Now, where did you find this in the movies on archives?
Oh, these things were around. It was just under one rock to the side there. And look, I actually I actually saw this years and years ago, and I remembered, and that's what started the hunt, because I thought, oh my God, this has been inspired by Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. And that's the beauty of this piece. You actually cut out of the song Californian Dreaming, and the next thing you're in like Tia Wanako. She's in this most incredibly revealing spacesuit. She's got a couple of spacemen with her, and they do a great choreographed dance sequence.
So she might have made a phone call to her dad to get the outfit for this.
Oh, I'd say so.
Rachael Welsh.
30-second special.
And what's happening with Mad Club? Is that still going?
Well, the Mad Club, now, for those people who don't know, that was basically, I'd go along to a club. I ran a club for a number of years, about 8 years here in Sydney, called the Mad Club in King's Cross, and we would DJ there while a food fight went on. We basically would have a food fight, set fire to things, use 240 volts and a water in a dangerous way. In fact, I was looking at some videos of that leading up to me doing a Mad Club recently, and basically everything we used to do in the early 90s is now illegal to do in a club. Apparently, it's illegal to swing a 240 volt light around your head on a rope while standing in a pool of water. Now,
I can't think why.
In a public place. Apparently that's illegal. Apparently putting a lighter fluid on the floor of a club in a 20-foot line, then setting fire to it, is illegal. And also running a two-stroke lawnmower in a club with no blades. We had no blades on the lawnmower, but we did have a fair bit of exhaust fumes in a club. You know, you're just not allowed to do those things anymore.
That's just party pooping, isn't it?
What has happened to taking your life in your hands when you go to a club? So we couldn't do any of that, but we did a Mad Club recently at Kinsella's, and we had a lot of fun there. And we got lots of people, but because everyone's got like 10 years older, they're not as big drinkers as they used to be. Now, I know listeners to the Drunk Tank will know that there's a
Drunk Tank?
The think tank. In the skeptic world, skepticism and alcohol, there's a bit of a, symbiosis. Is that the right word?
I think there is some symbiosis, yeah.
A little bit there. But in the Mad Club, because the people have got a bit older and a bit more sensible, instead of having 10 drinks in a night, like maybe they used to, they'd only have 3. So our bar take wasn't sufficient to do it again.
Oh, that's disappointing.
That's okay. But the great thing is I get to keep all the inflatables, all the props, and I've got a 6-foot palm tree in my lounge room now that is just fantastic. It's great. It's just sitting there. It looks good. So I get to keep all the props, so that's a good thing.
But you did set fire to a photo, didn't you?
That's
the
correct.
Last one. Was that illegal?
Well,
that was a bit on the edge.
Well, we went a bit further than that. I thought, look, we need a piñata, so why not a Posh Spice piñata? We had a Victoria Beckham piñata full of lollies, which is more than she's been for a long time, I would say.
Yes.
So we had a girl come up with high heels and get stuck into the Posh Spice piñata, and it worked quite well. And of course, we played some Spice Girls after it, and then we played some Bros, and then we played some Guru Josh. We played all the music, S Express. Maybe that's why the night didn't go so well. Maybe.
But do you think it was the 90s music, the 80s, 90s music?
The 80s, 90s music might have been the problem there, but if you go out and you don't hear a Bros tune, listener, you haven't had a good night.
No. I'm going to Spandau Ballet on Sunday night. Spandau Ballet and Tears for Fears.
I was going to say the big kicker for that is I was a bit about Spandau Ballet, but Tears for Fears and Spandau Ballet together, that's a pretty good combination.
Yeah. I had to go for that.
What other people do you think you'll see there? What type of people do you think you'll see? Single mums? Do you think you'll see divorcees? Do you think you'll see single people still bitter? What do you think you'll see?
I think I'll see some bitter single people, and I'll probably see maybe some more fluorescent colours. You know how the fashion's come back a little bit of the 80s, hasn't it? So maybe we'll see some young people with fluoro pink socks.
I took a date along to Duran when they were here, and she dressed up in full New Romantic sort of outfits, sort of thing, like you would perhaps sort of seen in a Human League film clip.
Oh, yes.
And she looked great, but everyone else was just looking normal. People weren't taking the whole thing seriously. And I don't see why you can't have a bit of fun with your past. That's what I've done all my life. Yeah,
no, you've got to take it seriously. I've got to get out my my scrunchies and my fluoro pink socks, I think, for Sunday.
And what will be your favourite Tears for Fears song?
Well, I'm a bit partial to Everybody Wants to Rule the World. It's not my favourite, but...
What about the later one? The one that was out when I was actually doing Triple J Breakfast was Sowing the Seeds of Love.
Yeah,
it was
that's
their last big hit. It's like I'm the Walrus.
Yeah, and also Mother's Talk. I like that one.
Oh, okay.
So
And
that's an album track. I'm getting obscure now.
now, being a skeptic, you would be aware of how they got their name. The Tears for Fears is based on some sort of therapy, reversion therapy or something like that.
Is it?
That's how they got their name.
I didn't know that.
In fact, I even heard a rumour that they actually started a band to get money so they could do the therapy, but I'm not quite sure.
Really?
I'm not sure. That's a very weird motivation for starting a band, to go into some therapy there, and I don't even know if it's quack therapy or real therapy. I'm not quite sure. We'll have to get... what is it? The Quackcast onto that, which is also one of my favourite podcasts as well.
Yeah,
That's
Mark Crislip. He's fantastic.
Pretty
yeah.
good.
So when are we going to maybe see you coming to some conventions and stuff, Maynard?
Look, I'm
Next
a
year.
big fan of Skeptic's Guide. Big fan of Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and I believe all those guys are coming here for TAM. So is it TAM we're having here?
It is TAM, yeah. TAM Australia.
I'm pretty interested in coming along to that. I think that would be fantastic, even if I just went around and did some podcasts and shows on it. And because have we had this thing here before?
No, this is the first time. This is the first time TAM will be in Australia.
Wow. I would like to go to that, because when all the skeptics get together, I want to see what they're like.
Yeah.
I mean, skeptics have a reputation as being a bit intense.
Yes.
and a bit geeky. And I think, that's a bad... I mean, yeah, sure, there's that aspect to it. Besides, what is wrong with that? What's wrong with being intense and geeky? More of it, I say. Like one of your guests said a while ago about being, an atheist. Stop being agnostic, be an atheist, or, pick a side and prepare to lose friends. And prepare to lose friends. I think that is a great quote. I think that's right. I mean, I've only sort of really said, yes, I'm an atheist in the last year, because I've just said I'm an agnostic for so long, and I thought, hang on a minute, I better make a decision on this. And it wasn't Richard Dawkins that changed my mind. It wasn't. It was Dylan Moran.
Was it really?
The comic Dylan Moran.
I love Dylan Moran of Black Books fame.
He had a line in his show where he said he used to be a Catholic or something, and he said. He said, stuff being an agnostic, you're still going to go to hell if you're an agnostic and you get up there and there's a heaven. And I thought, well, you're right. I better pick it. And that was basically his way of saying pick a side. So, okay, I'll go with the atheists. They seem like much more fun.
Yeah, fair enough too. Well, thanks very much for joining us, Maynard.
Oh, look, I'm sure I'll pretty much advance the cause of skepticism. Not at all here. In fact, I've probably taken it back a little bit. But look, you can check out what I'm doing on maynard.com.au, and through there's links to all the podcasts I mentioned, the No Agenda Show, Look at His Butt, all that sort of stuff. There's also Maynard TV, where I highlight video each week of my illustrious and embarrassing past on YouTube. And at the moment, we've got an interview with Tim Ferguson up. Now, Tim Ferguson used to be with the Doug Anthony All-Stars, and he's just written a book called The Cheeky Monkey on his history, on his theory of comedy. And that makes a real good interview if you're interested in how to write comedy. And also, what's Tim Ferguson doing? He's not dead either. He's still living in Melbourne.
Well, the last I remember him was Don't Forget Your Toothbrush. Remember that television show?
Exactly. And the weird thing is, as I mentioned with him, I often get mistaken for Tim Ferguson.
Do you?
Only because of my height and I've got dark hair. That is about the only thing. He's a much hotter guy than I am. I believe you me. He's got the jawline that just won't quit there.
I had a dirty big crush on him in the 90s, I have to say.
Well, I got to say, he probably was the best-looking member of the Doug Anthony All-Stars, but it depends on what you want. He was like the good-looking jawline, yet you had the everyday boy that you wanted to take home with you, and that was Richard.
Yeah.
And then there was the guy that, the dangerous bad guy that would go home and drink your blood, and that was Paul McDermott.
Yeah,
so,
that's true,
and you had all three of them in the one group there. No wonder the girls loved Doug Anthony All-Stars. So I've got an interview with Tim Ferguson on the Maynard's Malays podcast, available on iTunes and everything, stuff and that. But, it just depends on what I'm up to, and I put different things on there. And you can write to me and abuse me, don't worry.
Oh, great. Okay.
That's true.
Right.
But, I wish I was as smart as you, too, Dr. Rachel. I'm really, I would really like to be able to sit down and use some big words like I had this one practiced for the interview. Can I use it?
Yeah, you can. Please do.
I feel belief in transubstantiation is unsubstantiated. There. How does that sound? I spent all night on Wikipedia just so I could say that kind of thing.
Yeah, I saw you were twittering that you were.
I know. I said, I need a big word. So transubstantiation and the belief of the non-belief in that is what I would push. Yeah.
There was one other word that you shared with me. Do you want to share that with our listeners as well?
Well, this is actually from Tim Ferguson, because I said to Tim, what's an unusual word we could use in everyday conversation as a bit of humour? And he said, Fnord. F-N-O-R-D. And it's a bit hard to explain. Basically, think of the Coke logo. Think of the Coke logo, the font of the Coke logo. Now, if you change that for it to say "enjoy cocaine" or "enjoy cock," and I've seen both of those, that would be a Fnord because you've typographically changed something in the same font to say something different. You've subverted it. Now, it probably has a meaning deeper than that, but visually, that's what it means. So, if someone was doing a Fnord, if you're doing a Fnord, you're basically tapping away at the computer, so it's not interesting. But it is, well, what were you doing last night? Well, I'm Fnording away like you would not believe. So it still can be used comically.
Well, there's something that our listeners probably didn't know, so you're smart enough to tell them something new. Maynard.
Okay, yeah. Transubstantiation is unsubstantiated. I love that.
Thank you, Maynard, for joining us on the Skeptic Zone.
My pleasure, Dr. Rachael, and I hope to join you sometime in the drunk tank.
You'd be welcome anytime.
Attention people in Sydney, here's your chance to see Science and Art, a wonderful interaction between science and art. The Culture at Work residency of Queensland Brain Institute neuroscientist Dr. Adam Hamlin, as interviewed by Dr. Rachael on the Skeptic Zone, show number 60, and embroidery artist Melody Lord, well, they're going to explore the birth and death of neurons. This is a fascinating project. Adam and Melody will be presenting their Tuesday talk at Culture at Work, and that's 6 to 8 Scott Street in Pyrmont here in Sydney on May the 4th at 6 p.m. Sounds fascinating. Come along, and to find out more about it, why don't you drop an email to info@cultureatwork.com.au or check out the website www.cultureatwork.com.au.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
Well, here we are once again in our favourite club down the street. Welcome to the Think Tank. Hello to everyone.
Hello.
Cheers. And with us tonight, we have Eran Segev. Hi, Eran.
Hi, Rach.
Dave the Happy Singer.
Hello, everybody.
Joe Benhamu.
Hi, Dr. Rachael.
And a drunken madman.
Hello.
Or Jason Brown. Now, there's one person missing tonight. Where's Richard?
Where indeed?
Richard's not here tonight, listeners. He's he's gone down to Albury to spend some time with our voiceover man, Jim Wiltshire, and it's actually Jim's birthday today. So they're having a barbecue right now, nomming sausages and chops and yeah. So happy birthday to Jim!
Yay! Happy birthday, Jim! Happy birthday!
And so
who's doing the voiceovers then? If Jim's at a party?
Oh, Jim will do them later. I don't know.
Jim will fix it.
Jim will fix it. So, before we just get stuck into some news items this week, I received on Tuesday, I finally got my Shorty Award. Yay!
Is it golden? But isn't there a downside?
Well, before you give that away, you don't know this story, Eran?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. It's a glass plate. It's sort of around, A5 size.
For the benefit of listeners, Rachel is gesturing the size. This is no use to you at all.
I said A5 size.
Okay.
I don't know, it's like an 8 by 10 inch, roughly. And it's engraved. The glass is engraved. So you know that sort of sandblasting look that you get?
Can you tell me something about the wrapping?
No, the wrapping is fine. What you're inferring is not actually what was wrong with it. What was actually wrong with it was they misspelt my name on the award. So my name is spelt with an A-E-L, not an E-L. And somebody who engraved it obviously wasn't paying very much attention because, interestingly, it came packed, very well packed because it's glass. So it had 3 shipping dockets on it, all spelt correctly. It had a little sticker, spelt correctly. Within the packaging was the program from the night, spelt correctly. Everything else, even the box that the trophy came in had my name written twice in thick black texture, spelt correctly. And then when I opened it up, there was no A in there.
See, I think you should join the group on Facebook that I join. People who always have to spell their names for other people.
Oh, yeah, maybe. But, I mean, some
I
people...
established that group.
HAPPY. The other guy from Australia who got his at 27B/6, his came in 3 pieces.
Oh, no.
So I guess I should be grateful that it's not in 3 pieces. And also, it doesn't say McCullough or Mike Adams. So, you know.
Exactly.
There's always an upside.
Yeah. So, Dave, you tweeted the shorties and asked them to give me another one, didn't you? And a few people did that.
Sure did.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I should follow it up. I feel a bit...
Did they put Dr. Rachael Dunlop on it?
No.
They didn't.
Oh, double.
Well, if they left your honorific on them, we've definitely given this fix.
It just says Rachael Dunlop. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not even you. It's another Rachael Dunlop.
Someone else won the short.
Spelled without an A.
God. Yeah, maybe.
It's just a silly Twitter popularity contest anyway.
Yeah, who cares? I'm going to throw my toys out of the pram. But it's a really impressive looking trophy. Actually, I would have brought it tonight, but I forgot. But
That would have worked well on an audio podcast as well.
well, I'm just bragging, you know. Just bragging rights, just hugging it while we do the podcast.
Well done, Dr. Rachie.
Well done indeed.
Thank you. So I got you guys here, in particular, Jason and Happy, to talk about the ethics trials that are going on in New South Wales schools, and because you guys know a fair bit about this, and Eran does as well. Do you want to tell our listeners about that?
Yeah, anybody who wants to know a bit more background information, by the way, it's actually the top story on skeptics.com.au at the moment.
And over to you, Dave.
Yeah, I might blog about it on davethehappysinger.com as well.
That'll probably show up on skepticator.com.
Well, this is a story that goes back a fair way now, but the situation in Australian schools is that the churches are allowed to come in and offer what they call special religious education, which is not a comparative religion course, an objective look at what religious people believe, but it's taught by ministers, and it is a scripture class, and quite rightly the kids are allowed to opt out of it. But those children who opt out of scripture aren't allowed to be given anything useful to do in that time, so they've got to twiddle their thumbs or play computer games.
They're not even really allowed to go out in the playground and play football because they need supervision for that. So
Yeah.
it's go to the library and.
So no matter how you feel about having ministers coming into schools in the first place, the situation as it is now isn't great. So the St James's Ethics Centre, which is a ethical think tank here in Australia, proposed a secular alternative to scripture classes, which is a course doing an introduction to ethics. And the course outline, briefly, is to give something for the non-religious kids, time to learn to think about what's right and wrong, because ethics is a part of the special religious education alongside the brainwashing. So the basic course is to talk about the question of what ought one to do, to use dialogue to resolve that, to develop the basically the reasoning that we apply to ethical questions. And I think that not every member of the skeptical movement is also, a member of this atheist movement. No. And I'm one with a happy foot in both camps, as you know. But this is an issue where they're offering an alternative to sitting in a photocopying room, and that alternative is thinking about things, discussing things, reasoning, trying to figure out what's right and wrong. And I think this is one issue where, we really do need to speak with one voice, particularly because the religious and specifically the Christian backlash has been huge. Really quite.
It's also probably important to note, this is not an atheism class, okay? This is simply an alternative. It's a secular alternative, secular, not atheistic.
Well, an atheism class would be pretty short.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not competition in the sense that they're talking against religion. This is competition in the sense that it's something alternative for the kids to do, and the churches are obviously objecting to it very strongly.
Yeah. However, I think that the churches quite correctly realise that if children are given the option of going to scripture classes or going to a secular class where they're talking about these things and discussing these things, I think the children would choose that, and the church know this already.
The church have got really angry about this, haven't they?
Yeah, Archbishop Peter Jensen, this is of the Anglican tribe, he met the education department to express concern that enrolments for religion classes might drop as a result of ethics classes. Didn't. But he said, be warned, if government allows this course to continue after the trial, it will jeopardise religious education in public schools.
Yes.
Without such a religious component, public schools will cease to be inclusive of all children.
Which is
dear.
But of course we're forgetting the fact here that we're talking about public schools. We're not talking about religious schools.
We're talking about public schools.
Yep.
Yeah.
So...
I mean, we can go back to basic economics here, Mr. Jensen, improve your product. If people don't want to buy it, pick up your game.
Yeah.
Get them while they're young.
But the other thing, Dave, that's been happening is that the church has been trying to have input into what's in the classes, right? Have they? They've been interfering quite a lot.
They've aggressively lobbied for it, yes.
The Archbishop, as well as having basically what is a rather juvenile blog post every month actually printed in the newspapers, where he tends to rant about atheists. But he's also privately lobbied the Prime Minister of New South Wales. He's met with her in person.
Premier.
We don't have a Prime Minister here in New South Wales.
Is it Premier?
Christina Keneally.
That's the lady.
Her with the hairdo.
I don't know. The headline here is Keneally allows the Anglican Church to vet content of ethics lessons. If you actually read into it, it just says the government would contact the Anglican diocese regarding their input into the trial. So
I'd contact them regarding it and say, no, you have none.
Well, exactly. However, what did happen was that the Jensen, along with his Catholic counterparts, did fire up a little bit of a naff effort of a letter-writing campaign to get their parishioners to write and complain about this ethics trial. And with moderate success, Penny Sharp, who's a Labour MP, who is also very into the Facebook and the Twitter, and she's very approachable online, she received, I think, some 60-odd emails once these came out. We decided it was time to send some emails ourselves, and about, I don't know, 4 times the number, 5 times the number.
Probably about
contacted
that.
Her
probably
by
got
email.
60-odd friend requests on Facebook just from us. So.
And dozens of tweets and hundreds of emails. But the interesting thing was she did give us some stats on who had contacted her, and the people who were opposing the trial almost exclusively wrote by email, whereas the flood of people supporting this 10-week trial for ethics classes in schools came from Twitter and Facebook as well as from email. So perhaps there's a sign of a generational gap there between those who are opposing this ethics trial.
So the ones who opposed came from email?
Just email. She got about 60-odd emails.
Email now.
Yeah.
But,
emails.
But when it came to people who were writing to say, no, we support this is fantastic, please don't let your colleagues be harangued by this.
That was from more Web 2.0 stuff.
That was much more kind of Facebook and Twitter as well as the email.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting, as well as the sheer numbers. The sheer numbers were in this case, we did outnumber them considerably. And I think the reason why these clergymen are so terrified about this is because they know that parents and children, unless they're actually practicing religious people, would rather do the ethics trial. And I think a large number of the kids who are doing scripture now are doing it because the alternative is sitting in a photocopy room.
Well, yeah, I've got a figure in front of me now from an article on the Morning Herald which says that 47% of kids at Balcombe Hills actually opted for the ethics class. And Balcombe Hills is the very heartland of Hillsong.
Yeah,
it's quite a sort of a very family, traditional, conservative kind of religious area. And 47% of the kids were going into the ethics class.
Do you know if that correlates to how many didn't do any classes before? Do you know how many kids sat out of scripture?
We don't know how many opt-outs there were, or at least it's not in the article that I've got.
Because that suggests to me that that's a lot more than who would have opted out. If
The article talks about a guy called Robert Haddad from the Confraternity of Christian Doctrine in the Catholic Archdiocese of Sydney, and he claims that he lost a lot of SRE kids between term 1 and term 2. Okay. So,
excellent.
Whether that's actually true or not, I don't have the figures. It's a pretty interesting thing, and 47% of kids in a very religious area. It's quite good.
Yeah, I think they had actually said, if I recall correctly, that there was a large dropout rate when they were given the choice, and that was for them adding fuel to the
but again, religious guys, improve your product if you want to sell it.
Interesting stuff. So, Eran, what are you peering at over there? You've got some news from Israeli skeptics, haven't you?
Yes, Israeli skeptics got in touch with me because somebody heard the Skeptic Zone, and she recognized the name as Israeli, and the accent.
Your name, that is.
The accent, yes, my name. Her name is Lotem Eliyahu, and she organized the first Skeptics in the Pub in Haifa in Israel. They had more than 100 people. Came the very first one.
That's pretty good for a first Skeptics in the Pub.
I agree. Well
Congratulations.
done. Yeah. So and people have come from other cities as well, and there's obviously huge hunger. They're organizing more. I wish them all success. People who have been reading the Skeptic magazine will know that I published an article there probably about 4 or 5 years ago now after a previous visit to Israel, where I talked about how there's no Israeli skeptics scene. And there wasn't one when I visited less than a year ago. I tried to get in touch with Israeli skeptics, and there was nobody to get in touch with. So to hear that there is now a growing movement is fantastic. She also got me in touch, or she got me listening to a couple of podcasts in Hebrew, including one that I want to talk about. The name of the podcast is Safek Savir, which means reasonable doubt, which is very cute because doubt in Hebrew is the same word as skepticism. So it's like so it's got skepticism in the name, but it also means reasonable doubt. It's a little bit like SGU. So they've got a few people, and they've got different segments, and people have different roles. And one guy is leading it. His name is Eran. It's only 6 episodes so far, but they're really doing very well. Right from the first one, they really had it together. It flows very well, and I was very impressed with what they've done there. So in episode 6, Eran in his Rogues gave me and the Skeptic Zone podcast a shout out. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, excellent.
I want to
shout out in return.
I want to give a shout out in return. Yes, I will. Thank you very much, and תמשיכו ככה, חבר'ה.
Bless you.
Yeah.
Let's just talk a little bit about some of our other projects. I know you have a project, Dave, don't you? What's your website called?
Oh, well, the new website I just launched was CatholicBlame.com, which is just a daily updated compendium of scapegoats that the dear Catholic Church has blamed this public outrage at child rape on, including television, the internet, pornography, the gays, the Jews,
the children themselves,
Satan, the victims themselves,
yeah.
indeed.
The Beatles? No.
Not the Beatles. No.
There's still time.
In fact, quite the opposite. When the whole world was looking at the Catholic Church and saying, "Can you show us some contrition, please?" The Vatican newspapers, La Salvatore Romana said, the Pope's forgiven the Beatles. 44 years after John Lennon said quite accurately that Christianity was probably going to diminish in its influence in the future. So well done there. That was perhaps the most tasteless and transparent publicity I've seen in a long time. So yeah, they've blamed everybody except the Beatles.
Wait a minute, are you talking about tasteless and transparent publicity stunts? You've got Dave the Happy Singer.
It seems to be a week for laying blame, because wasn't there an Iranian cleric today who blamed earthquakes on promiscuous women?
Yes, there is. I'd like to mention a little something about that.
Oh, tell us about boobquakes.
An Iranian cleric. An Iranian cleric has discovered the cause of catastrophic earthquakes, and it's not plate tectonics, apparently. But there's a great backlash that's going to be launched by several groups across America, let's say. There's a thing called boob quake. Now, ladies, it's very important. You need to do this. I just need to check when the date is. April the 26th, 2010 will be boob quake day. What you have to do, ladies, seriously, this is come on. You need to, if you're not comfy with showing a lot of cleavage, wear a tight top. But basically you have to show a lot of boobie on April the 26th just to demonstrate to this Iranian cleric that it won't cause another earthquake. And because science is repeatable, you have to do it every year. 26th. Lots of boobie.
Let's get your
Thank you
boots
very
out
much.
for Science Day, is it?
Pretty much. I'm fully behind this effort. I'm sure you are.
Actually, I also heard that Deepak Chopra took credit for an earthquake in California the other day.
He had a
on Twitter.
powerful meditation.
He did. He tweeted that he had a particularly powerful meditation these days. And then there was an earthquake.
Actually, I'm kind of hoping he was
Did the earth
joking.
move for you, darling?
No, he tweeted it. It's quite serious. In fact, he's coming out here this month, isn't he?
Is it this month?
I think so. He'll be in Australia.
Gay meditating prostitutes with their boobs out are causing natural disasters.
As long as they vote for bad abortion laws.
Yes. So all of you guys, stop doing it, okay?
There's one bloke at home saying, "Why are they always picking on me?"
Jason, can you just give us a little bit of a rundown of how your new project's going, the Skepticator?
Oh, the Skepticator is going very well. I can actually check and get a live count of how many articles we've got at the moment. I'll just refresh the page. For those of you who don't know, who didn't listen to last month's podcast or the month before, or the week before, Skepticator.com is a aggregator for skeptical blogs. It pulls in about 261 skeptical blogs, and currently has 9,536 articles indexed.
That's over 9,000!
So by the time this podcast hits the streets, that'll be over 10,000. And it's just going to keep on growing. So guys, keep blogging. It's brilliant.
But you've also just developed a mobile phone
I have.
feature,
It's going to be hitting mobile phones. There's a pilot site out now at m.skepticator.com, or sorry, m.skepticator.net, because I have both names. That'll have search on it shortly. At the moment, it just shows you a list of articles, but it'll be, I'll be cranking that up, and it'll be very nice for, if you're in the pub and someone says to you, "Oh, I was meditating the other day and I caused an earthquake." You'll be able to just pull up Skepticator on your phone and type in "meditating in earthquakes" and go, "Sorry, that's..."
Canterbury.
Oh,
Your service departs in 5 minutes time to Canterbury, UFC and Elwood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey!
Canterbury, Campsie, Elwood. Okay. But yes, it's the in the pub argument settler for skeptical issues. m.skepticator.net.
Not only that, it's just perfect for killing time if you're on a bus ride or you've
Well, you do have a lot of
long
spare
visit-
time on your hands.
particularly long visit to the bathroom, something like that. m.skepticator.com. I don't know why I'm plugging this so much. Go to DaveTheHappySinger.com.
That's because you're indexed on it, Dave the Happy Singer.
Eran, you have something about Madge?
Madge.
No, what is Madge? Tell us about Madge.
Well, there's an ABC program called Background Briefing, which covers something, different topics every week. And Background Briefing had an 18th of April show about food fears by reporter Stephen Crittenden. The show was about food labeling, but one of the organizations used as a source is called MADGE, M-A-D-G-E, which stands for, listen to this, Mothers Are Demystifying Genetic Engineering. Now,
What?
yeah, I know. So, the thing is, he talked to them about labeling, but they obviously expressed concern about the health issues that could be related to genetic engineering. So I did a bit of a search on them, and they look very much like a one-person operation headed by Madeleine Love, her name is. But the site is very much anti-GM rather than pro-information. So I feel like there's AVN, like one-person operation.
I've heard this somewhere before.
And with a deceptive name. Now I'm not 100% sure about this, and I've only spent like half an hour on this, but here are a few things I found. First of all, their homepage, Madge homepage,
Are they Australian-based?
Yeah, in Victoria, madge.org.au. Says, we are concerned about the lack of adequate labeling and testing of GM foods. Admirable. I have no problem with that at all. But the next sentence is, we advocate on behalf of consumers for the right to know what is in our food. We promote information on natural foods and healthy farming practices. Natural foods, natural, the word natural.
Yeah.
Alarm bells ringing. Then in
GM foods magic.
In the safe,
supernatural food, yeah.
in the safe food shopping guide, they have the first item is how to shop GM, additive and pesticide free. There's an article here on how to keep Australian canola GM free. I looked for information that talks about the studies that have been done about GM foods and to see whether they actually show that, the positive things about GM foods and the increased yield, the reduced amount of pesticide, all those things that have been shown. And I agree that more testing is required. That there's no problem with that at all. But they have nothing positive. GM is evil. Now, the next thing I found was that I went to see what kind of references they had. They have a paper here from the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, which has released its position paper on genetically modified foods, stating that, and I quote now, GM foods pose a serious health risk and calling for a moratorium on GM foods. And it's a very serious paper because, for example, it shows here that there's a direct link between anaphylaxis admissions to GM crop approvals.
What?
But Eran, this is the first time I've heard of the American Academy of Environmental
Okay, well,
Medicine.
I have heard of them for the very first time too, but went to their website and found two position papers. One position paper, I won't tell you what it's about, but it says, whereas scientific research has clearly identified that fluoride is a known toxic substance and that adversely affects human health. And whereas fluoride is known
bodily fluids
is a known neurotoxin and carcinogen, even at the levels added to the public water supplies as promoted by the American Dental Association and the United States Public Health Service. The American Academy supports, the AAEM now, supports banning the addition of fluoride or products containing fluoride to public water supplies and to any substances intended for human consumption.
So
okay, that's one. Another position paper.
Is their patron General Jack D. Ripper?
In another position paper, they say that the organization is opposed to the international use of mercury in any material that is implanted, ingested, or injected in the human body, including all forms used in medicine, including but not limited to any medicaments, specifically vaccinations.
Yay, the anti-vax.
Okay, so I think, I don't think the jury's probably still a little bit out on Madge, but he's looking very, very suspicious.
Yeah.
The mothers.
They've got a mother.
Oh, yeah, no.
You know, and
It's like
Zappa had mothers too.
like Jenny's mummy instinct.
And I'm just thinking all these poor scientists out there slaving away for, I'm sure Dr. Rachel will agree with me, a pittance compared with the academic work you put in to get that job.
Yeah.
And really working hard and fighting so hard to get published and all this stuff, putting all this effort in to find out what's real. When in fact the mothers could just tell them what's right in the first place.
Oh, exactly. Well, were they interviewed as experts in this area? What was the context of
that they're experts on GM foods. Yes.
Interesting. So lastly, Joe, you've got something there about a newspaper taking a stand
against
in an interesting way. Yeah.
This is quite interesting. In fact, someone tweeted it on the weekend, which was how I got hold of it, and I can't remember who it was. So this was about an Auckland newspaper called the Indian Weekender, who's decided to take a stand against advertising for purveyors of supernatural services. And it really does tie in fact, to the Indian legislation about advertising for people like gurus and yogis and so on. And what's happened is that they've decided to adopt guidelines based on Indian law. They say, in a bid to fend off a flood of ethically questionable advertisements offering supernatural services to the public. Now, apparently, India's Drugs and Magic Remedies Objectionable Advertisement Act actually has a whole range of guidelines and laws about what can and can't be advertised in India. And this particular newspaper has taken a stand against similar sorts of advertising in their newspaper. They really feel that it's something that has gotten out of control, and they feel that they need to do something to protect the public. Apparently in India, this particular act provides for 2 months jail and a 2,000 rupee fine, but unfortunately in India it's been very unenforced because apparently the politicians there have actually, they make use of a lot of these yogis and so on by sheltering them because they get votes from a lot of their followers. The Indian Weekender felt that they could use these guidelines to inform how they actually choose some of their advertising. And apparently in New Zealand, there was actually an act called the Tahunga Suppression Act, which was aimed at people targeting the superstition or credulity of the Maori people. But this was repealed in 1962, so there used to be an act in New Zealand which actually would protect people.
Well, they could have just dropped Maori out of it and just said, we'll protect the credulity of people.
Yeah, they could have.
That would have been quite nice.
So I think that it's something that, we've seen recently, the decision that was made by Sydney's Child against
which I have to
advertising
applaud,
from the ABN. Absolutely, and I think we've discussed it on here.
Can I just point out that Joe's piece there was brought to you by Dr. Bogus's Chiropractic Centre and DaveTheHappySinger.com.
Have you noticed, though, when we do 2GB on Saturday nights,
yes,
there's always at the end of our segment, this segment is sponsored by Dr. Cabot's Liver Detox. Every time.
I think last Saturday night, right after you'd given a whole talk on red flags and things to look for, there was an ad for some arthritis cream that was complete nonsense. It was perfectly timed.
It's just as bad online. I mean, the other day here in Australia, there was a gangland hoodlum. Carl Williams got murdered in prison, and next to the news story there was "Make a killing trading foreign currency."
I have to say, though, one last thing about this story, which really surprised me, was that it amazed me that India has got this type of legislation, given that India is such a hotbed of woo. I mean, the way homeopathy is accepted.
Dr. Nancy Malik, not a doctor.
Dr.
Absolutely. Hi, Nancy. It's me.
There are skeptics doing great work in India as well, though. I mean, some of the stuff that the Indian skeptics have done
Indian
is fantastic.
Association.
Absolutely brilliant. And the one where the guru threatened to kill the skeptic.
Oh, that was
live on television. One of the funniest things I've seen.
All right, well, thanks, guys, for joining us again for the Think Tank. Cheers to everyone. And we even got an bus announcement. I hope it makes it. And until next week, thanks, and we'll see you again.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and again, a really big thank you to Dr. Rachael this week for getting all those segments together and running around and doing the recording. Hats off, Dr. Rachael. Very well done. Great to know that when I'm out of town and out of commission, there are people out there like Kylie and Dr. Rachael ready to jump in and do a lot of work. And thank you to those people who are subscribing to the Skeptic Zone, only about $1 a week or 99 cents or something trivial. And those people who kindly, very kindly give us donations. In fact, I'm just about to buy a new digital recorder for our reporter, Dr. Chrissy, who's off to the UK, and she's going to be grabbing some great interviews while she's over there. So, until next week, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
The Skeptic Zone.